Long, long ago, in a land far, far away, people would tell each other stories, tales of myths and legends. So pull up by the fire and let me tell you a tale from somewhere else. The Pool of Xoctl by Gordon Linzner. To an extent, I should be grateful to Manfred Cole for the loss of my left arm. Since that tragedy, I spent far too much time sitting alone in cheap cantinas in one or another of the small villages dotting the Yucatan Peninsula. I prefer the kind of town rarely able to support one such cantina, as I'm less likely to run into people I know. Once or twice a week, an American tourist manages to stumble across one of these little hamlets. My missing limb attracts their attention. My American origins are recognized, and I can count on at least 2 free drinks. First, and always first, comes the fellow countryman in this god-forsaken hole, which is acceptable. No matter how much of a recluse you are, or how unlikable your companion may be, it's nice to know the old country still exists. That's a very easy fact to forget, living the kind of life that I do. The cheerful toast, for old time's sake, is harder to swallow. It is a thinly disguised sop to the traveler's mingled feelings of pity and revulsion. When questioned too bluntly about my amputation, I become surly and insulting. This makes me a colorful character, and sometimes earns me a full bottle of tequila, as well as privacy in which to enjoy it. So as I said, I might owe Herr Cole a debt. On the other hand, pardon the expression, I wouldn't need to hustle drinks if I'd never met the man. It was in one such cantina that I first met Manfred Cole. He was a tall man with a heavily scarred face. His Germanic profile was topped by a tangled nest of milky white hair. I judged his age about 70. Yes, he moved easily and quickly, demonstrating excellent health. His posture was that of a well-disciplined man in his 20s. In those days, it was rare to find me sitting alone. That night, it was an exception. I'd been waiting for a lovely senora to join me. She never showed. I later heard her husband had learned of her planned tryst. Fortunately, she did not know my real name. Less fortunately, the circumstances left me vulnerable to Cole's advances. Noting that I was the only isolated foreigner in the establishment, he quietly invited himself to join me. Dos tequila, por favor, he called to the cantina's owner. Even then, I was not famous for turning down free drinks, and accepted the German's hospitality with a nod. Anxiety over my missing lover made me thirstier than usual. We sat in silence for some minutes, slowly slipping from our glasses. It was a time for a cautious study and tentative friendliness. Cole finally broke the spell. You look like a distrait young man. Would you like to earn a few pesos? Maybe. Maybe, I thought to myself. Hell yeah, I was down to my last 2 dineros. I need someone familiar with the jungles of Yucatan to guide me to a certain destination. Could you do that? I mulled his offer over, decided I should play it straight. Possibly, but I can find you someone with a far better knowledge of the brush than I have, for a fee. Excellent. Bring him to me tomorrow morning by the edge of town. I wish to leave at dawn. Cole stood abruptly and drained his glass. What's your hurry? I asked. I need to know more about the deal first. Cole smiled the kind of smile one imagines a reptile might have, cold and humorless. From his shirt pocket, Cole pulled out a small roll of paper currency. For a moment, he balanced this in his right hand, holding it even with my eyes. Then he let it drop with a dull clunk onto the cheap wooden table. I flipped through the roll, counting quickly. 5,000 pesos. And the same upon our safe return, Cole added. I trust that answers your questions for now. It did. In fact, the chief of bills answered my question so completely, it did not occur to me until much later that the mysterious German had not yet told me his name. I learned it at daybreak the following day. When we rendezvoused at the jungle's edge, I had recruited Eduardo, a 15-year-old boy who was tall for his age and insisted he was over 20. Despite his youth, Eduardo knew the jungles around the village better than the average city dweller knows his own block. It was not the first time I had served to my profit as an intermediary between Eduardo and a wealthy tourist. I had no inkling that this would be the last. We did not know how long an excursion Cole had planned, so we each carried about a week's worth of supplies. If game were plentiful, we had enough for a month. I also carried my hunting rifle. Eduardo brought his proudest possession, a handsome 3-foot-long machete, which he used to hack through the dense undergrowth. Cole, he approached with a stiff, proud strut as soon as he spotted us. He nodded brusquely at me before turning to examine the lad, taking in his clear, dark, intelligent eyes and the adolescent but well-developed muscles with approval. Eduardo flashed a big grin at the German, a reflex I had taught him to help integrate himself with the hearts of the well-off tourists. Cole seemed pleased even with that before the smile. He tousled the youth's unkempt hair, then turned back to me. The boy is most satisfactory, my American friend. I think he and I will get along very well. Cole's tone left no doubt that I was now included out. I resented the snub, but more importantly, was suddenly highly uncomfortable with the idea of leaving Eduardo alone with him. Despite the German's affluence, I hadn't exactly warmed up to Herr Cole in the cantina, and the pale light of dawn only seemed to underscore his sinister aurora. There was also the balance of the 5,000 pesos to be gained on completion, of which I'd only promised 500 to Eduardo. I'm responsible to the boy's mother for his safety, Cole, I protested. I need to come along and keep an eye on him. Cole shrugged. Payment is the same for one or two. When I did not react, he turned and pointed towards the interior. I noticed he carried neither rifle nor machete, only a Luger pistol strapped to his belt. It seemed an inadequate defense against the jungle's potential threats. Those dangers would prove to be the least of my concerns. That first day, once we were truly deep within the interior, Cole halted our little party. We rest here, he ordered, dropping his pack. We've plenty of daylight left, I protested, glancing pointedly up at the sun. Why not cover a few extra miles while we can? We rest, Cole repeated sternly. The guide and I must now carefully plan our route. I shrugged. It was Cole's money. We rested. At least I did. Cole and Eduardo barely took time for dinner. Even after dark, the pair sat by the fire, using its glow to examine the map Cole had brought. There were many exclamations and wild gestures. My Spanish was serviceable, but their conversation was much too fast and disjointed for me to even follow. I finally left their company to the bed down for the night. As the days passed, I began wondering why Manfred Cole required the service of a guide at all. He seemed to know exactly where he was going. From time to time, he corrected Eduardo, pointing determinedly at his map when he felt the boy had made the wrong turning. More often than not, Eduardo would admit the bulky German was right, and we would continue in Cole's direction. Where Cole was absurdly sure of himself, however, I grew less and less confident of my ability to backtrack along our route. We took so many twists and turns, often hacking new paths through the foliage, that my sense of direction was completely muddled. I felt as if we were being led through some gigantic maze. Slightly after noon, though, on the 9th day of our expedition, Cole terminated our march. He ordered Eduardo and myself to set up camp, then pushed on ahead alone. This provided me with my first opportunity to talk to Eduardo without being overheard by the German. I am very sorry, senor, he replied to my inquiries. I have promised Senor Cole I cannot discuss the pool. Pool? What pool? I cannot say, senor. I scratched the back of my neck in frustration. You know I am also bound by a promise, Eduardo. My promise to your mother to look out for you. I don't see how I can adequately protect you if you're going to keep secrets. I am a man, Eduardo countered. I can take care of myself. He lowered his eyes. I'm sure you can, but you know how your mother worries about you. Since your father died, Eduardo kept looking at the ground. I had almost cracked his resistance. All the boy needed was a light push, and I pushed. Do you think she would be happy to hear you refuse to speak the truth to the man she entrusted your well-being to? The youth sighed. You will not tell Senor Cole? Of course not. Whatever game Manfred Cole was playing, I didn't want him to know that I'd peeked at the rules. Senor Cole claims his map shows the location of the sacred Pool of Xoctl. He volunteered no more information, nor did I press him further. Xoctl was an obscure Incan god who owed what little fame he retained in the modern world to the legendary pool that bore his name. Among the mythical properties of its water was the ability to restore youth and vitality. Few men brave these jungles for such a wild goose chase. Those who had in the past returned empty-handed or not at all. The Incans had protected the sacred location by surrounding the pool with a complex labyrinth of bush flora. The maze was further enhanced by centuries of unchecked jungle growth. Somehow, Manfred Cole had obtained a copy of an ancient map showing Xoctl's position. He undoubtedly had knowledge of whatever forgotten ritual was necessary to make use of the pool's rejuvenating powers. He'd been here before. An hour after this revelation, the German returned to camp. I did not bother asking where he'd been, having grown used to his tactum ways. I'd already guessed. Eduardo, on the other hand, was aflame with curiosity. "We are here, senor?" "Ja," Cole replied. "Now leave me. I need to rest this afternoon." We let him be. Eduardo amused himself by capturing ants from one nest and conveying them to another on the opposite side of our campsite. He laughed as the invaders were torn to pieces by the second nest's defenders. I loitered near my pack for a time, poking idly through its contents. Unlike a certain Eduardo, who was completely enthralled by his game and Cole deeply into his siesta. Once assured my absence would not be noted, I entered the jungle at the same spot Cole had. If Cole had wanted to keep this last leg of the journey a secret, he certainly betrayed a lack of jungle expertise. I easily followed the trail of crushed grass and broken foliage. I walked for roughly a half an hour, covering the same distance the German would have done. I stopped. I saw nothing but the thick, dark vegetation of the Yucatan jungles around me. Finally, then, beneath the chattering of monkeys and buzzing of insects, I could discern the babbling of running water. I pushed through the brush towards the sound, and moments later stumbled into an unexpected clearing. The area was grassy but relatively cool. After the sticky heat retained by the surrounding trees, at its center, not more than 50 yards from where I'd entered, a small pool of water bubbled, no doubt fed by some underground stream. The sacred Pool of Xoctl. I slowly approached, both drawn to and vaguely leery of the pool. Its waters looked inviting and sinister. I felt a sudden thirst, yearning to drink from it, but could not shake the insane feeling doing so would bring about my doom. I laughed at the irrational feeling. Nevertheless, it was with warm water from my canteen, not cool liquid of the pool, that I quenched that thirst. I then rushed back to the camp, managing in my haste to shake my head almost clear of that strange foreboding. Almost. I tried to sleep that night, knowing I would need to be alert to whatever Manfred Cole was up to come morning. It was useless, though. After a fitful hour, I picked up my rifle and moved toward the dying fire. I planned to clean my weapon by its flickering light, rather than risk waking my companions with my electric lamp. The gun needed no attention, but I required some kind of activity to occupy my mind. Stirring the ashes to create a brighter glow, I suddenly realized how truly alone I was. Both Manfred Cole and Eduardo were missing from our camp. There was nothing alarming about Cole's disappearance. The man kept to himself, often doing unexpected and irrational things. Eduardo, however, knew better than to wander the jungle at night. So did I. That didn't prevent me from changing through the brush after them. I had no doubt that German had lured the young guy to the mysterious Pool of Xoctl. I had had enough of Cole's high-handed attitude, and I looked forward to humiliating him in front of the boy. Moving faster than I had that afternoon, I stumbled through the pitch-black jungle for perhaps 20 minutes. The light of a small torch I hastily thrust into the fire guided me. At last, I had to slow down. I had to catch my breath. A loud, high-pitched scream echoed throughout the jungle. The scream was not half as unnerving as its abrupt ending, and the fact that the screamer, it was clearly Eduardo. I again pushed through the dense undergrowth, moving rapidly, ignoring roots that almost seemed to reach out to trip me. The distant cries of the wild animals had faded into nothing. Then I was in a clearing, as abruptly as I'd arrived there that afternoon. A full moon drenched the area in lunar light. At the edge of the pool stood the tall, straight form of Manfred Cole. Eduardo's machete was gripped by his right hand. Thick, dripping blackness coated the blade. At the German's feet lay the crippled form of our young guide. The boy's chest was a gaping hole, oozing gore. "In God's name, Cole," I shouted from the edge of the clearing, "what have you done?" The German turned to me. Neither his face nor his voice betrayed any emotion. The brutality of the boy's slaying was even more terrible for that indifference. Not in God's name, my American Fred, he called back, but mine. It was necessary. Frozen in shock at the gruesome sight, I did not react as quickly as I should have when moonlight reflected off the metal of Herr Cole's lugger. I managed to turn as he fired through, so Cole's bullet tore through the flesh and bone of my left arm instead of my heart. The impact threw me to the ground, where I lay dazed and helpless. Cole returned to hacking away at Eduardo's corpse. As if the mortar itself had not been full enough, Cole then bent over the mutilated body. With a brutal yank, he tore out the boy's heart, still pumping blood. Once more, the machete blade flashed, and the heart separated in two. Cole discarded one half, then dipped the other into the unholy pool. With this grisly ladle, he scooped up a quantity of water and poured it down his throat. I could watch no more. My rifle lay a few feet from me, where I dropped it when I was shot. Cole remained engrossed in his ghoulish deed, obviously confident I was dead, or at least mortally wounded. I half crawled, half rode towards my rifle, using its barrel for leverage in place of my now useless left arm. I braced myself against a tree. Carefully, I raised the gun to aim it. Carefully, because I knew I only had one shot. I was growing weak from loss of blood, and the pain in my wound was distracting. Cole's form grew less distinct as I felt my vision start to blur. That blurring led to the curious illusion that Manfred Cole was growing younger. The German's hair appeared to darken, merging with the shadows behind him. My dimming eyes seemed to smooth the wrinkles of Cole's own skin. I shut my eyes tightly to wash away those images. Soon I might not be able to see the man at all. I forced myself to open it again, focusing on Cole's outline. Without further delay, I pulled the trigger. Cole's body jerked with the impact of my bullet. He fell face down, flowing into the pool. I crawled painfully along that uneven ground towards him. I had to conform for my peace of mind that the sight of Cole's rejuvenation had indeed been a hallucination. To my relief, the man's hair was still white as snow. Under harsh moonlight, his body seemed, if anything, older and more worn than before. The sight of Eduardo's mangled corpse, close enough that I could have touched it had my left arm been functional, made me violently ill. I emptied my stomach into the pool's churning waters, then rode away to pass out face down. There, I lay until well into the afternoon of the following day, passing in and out of consciousness, weak from the sickness and the blood loss, and the pain and the grief. The events of the following days I barely remember. There was a lot of near-blind semi-consciousness pushing through the brush. That I was not taken down by some predator animal seemed a miracle to me. Maybe they decided almost any other prey would be less distasteful. When my mind finally cleared, I lay on a cot in a small field hospital. I was told I'd been found by a 4-man hunting party, several days' march from the town where I met the monstrous Manfred Cole. My left arm, in which the German's bullet lodged, had become gangrenous from neglect, and had to be amputated at the shoulder. Since then, I have been as I am now, traveling from one tiny Mexican village to another, caging drinks from pitying tourists and townsfolk alike, and laughing at the ridiculous legend of the Pool of Xoctl. Those few who know my story, they think I drink to forget the horror of Eduardo's gruesome death. They are mistaken, though. I have seen men die before, sometimes in just as violent a fashion. It made me physically ill, but the memory, that was bearable. No, what haunts me the most is the idea that my vision had not been impaired as I thought it had been that night I killed Manfred Cole. I dropped the man with a single shot, and I have little faith in luck. I have woken frequently from the nightmares in which the German truly grows stronger, reverting to his true age after death. And each time that memory returns, I also recall more of the circuitous path we traveled to reach that cursed clearing, enough that I began to believe I could find the Pool of Xoctl again, on my own, that I too could perform Cole's grotesque ritual. It is this knowledge that I hope, I pray, to destroy with the alcohol. Hey there! If you made it all the way to the end of this tale, you have many, many thanks from me. Thanks for listening to this story from another time. And if you have a moment, please feel free to like, comment, share, and subscribe. This helps me to know someone is out there listening. Otherwise, feel free to check out other stories and videos on the channel. And one final thank you for listening to this tale from someone else. Take care and keep safe.